Hi there and welcome to this fun project that, I often say welcome to this fun video, but I feel like this is actually fun because this is a batch of white dresses that I made and then, gave myself the challenge to dye them completely different ways, and I just think they turned out really, really cool. So I've got some fabric here lying in 4 layers, 2 folds, and I'm doing it super easy. So I'm only cutting under the sleeve and neckline opening, and not cutting the shoulder seams because I want it to sew as little as possible, and then cutting the front neck opening there, as you can see. So there is a back neck opening and a front neck opening, and then it's just about stitching all the way down to under the arms, down towards the opening, and then stitching on a middle tier layer and then a bottom tier layer, and just creating some long lines of fabric that I can then stitch together and ruffle and attach to the dress. So it was a fun challenge because I wanted it to be very easy to sew and then to just dye them in different ways. I was lucky enough to get this fabric gifted. It's some old sheets from this big kind of washing company. So here I am with my serger, and I'm just doing the sewing together part and also just stitching, giving a serger seam here at the sleeve opening. As you can see, that was one side. Then I'm doing the other side. And again, the sleeve opening, doing a serger seam there, just because I want the edges not to fray. And that's the actual top bit done. And then it's just the massive job of attaching all this fabric, these gathers. And as I've showed on many videos actually by now, I have my divide into 4 parts technique, where I divide the top bottom opening into 4 parts and divide my tube part, my tier part, into 4 parts. And then I align those 4 parts because then I have like a quarter of the dress that I need to ruffle and gather at once, and not like the whole entire dress. And I can just gather them with wonder clips in between the sewing. I don't have to worry about pins and losing them on the floor, or getting them stuck to my hand or something. So I really like that technique. And basically this is just it. You can extend that several times. You can make as many tiers as you want, and of course it will just get wider and wider and wider towards the bottom. I normally go with the method of multiplying my bottom opening width of the top bit with 1.5 or 2 if I want it really wide for the coming layer, for the coming tier, and then again doing that. So if I have a bottom opening of the top that's 1 meter, well then my tier meter could be 1.5, and so on and so forth. So there's a lot of gathers and a lot of ruffles, and of course for the next tier it's going to be even worse, even more. So there's a lot to keep track of there, but here you have it magically. So that dress just sewed itself. So that's all the rough parts done. The dress is stitched together, the tiers are on, and now I just need to add some finishing touches. I'm doing that on my sewing machine. So I've got the neck opening, just tried of course that it fits me, and then I'm using some very narrow bias tape. I'm adding it to the front of the fabric of the neck opening, and then facing the front of the bias tape in towards the front of the fabric. And then there is this little kind of fold in the bias tape towards the right, and I'm just trying to stitch into that fold quite close to the edge as well. So I'm just getting a tiny little edge there, and then afterwards, when I've done it all the way around, I'm making a little overlap, and then I can fold the bias tape towards the back and then hide the raw edges of the fabric inside that little fold, and it looks nice and neat, as you can see there. Then I can fold it towards the back, and it's going to look really pretty. And folding it in towards the back like that, and you just stitch that in place, and then those raw edges hidden inside won't go anywhere. So that's just a brilliant way to do it. I love my bias tape, it makes it really easy. And for dyeing these white colors after, just make sure that you also use some bias tape that is of some kind of quality that you can also dye, so the colors will match. Or then just be aware that of course if it's some kind of synthetic bias tape that won't match or won't dye, then it's gonna show up. But not so worried about that. right now because this is fine. And yeah, you can just see the green marker underneath there, but that's going to go all away because of course I'm going to dye them, so that's fine. And I want to have balloon sleeves on these, so I'm just using some elastic tape and just measuring it against my arm, so I'm sure that it's going to fit nicely, creating a little tube casing there and making a little circle, making a little casing there with my elastic, putting it into the tube, into my little channel, and then stitching it in place. So you have to pull on the elastic as you go along and make sure, of course, that you don't stitch the elastic into the kind of stitch it stuck to the casing, because I like to have it moving freely inside it. Yeah, you have to be a little bit careful with that. You can also just put the elastic in before you actually tie the elastic ends together, but I just like to have them measured and then they're ready to go. And so here we have the white dress, and yes, looking very simple and flowy, and oh yes, enough with that twirling, Karoline. You have to get down to the basement to do some dyeing, and for this I'm doing some ice dyeing, and that was just because I defrosted the freezer, so I thought that was fun to use some of the ice from it. And I'm using these dyes, but I hadn't added enough soda ash to those dyes, so actually the colors here, they look so beautiful, but I needed to repeat this process quite a few times because yeah, before the colors actually stuck enough to it. So that's the fun bit, you know, it can always look really pretty and you think it's amazing, but then it doesn't turn out exactly like you wanted it. So this is all the process and something that I'm also learning as I go. But yes, I just put them in plastic bags, maybe make the dresses a little bit wet, and then add some ice cubes, add some dye, add some more ice cubes, perhaps add a little bit of water, and then just close up those bags and then leave them for 24 hours or more. And sometimes the ice can actually get too cold, so it doesn't really melt, and that can also stop the coloring process. So here's my little cat, and she's very interested. And I've got my bags there of dyed dresses and just opening them up, and they are very pretty. They didn't get quite as strong as I hoped, so that's why I'm just deciding to do a little bit more to them. And I'm trying to do some different colorways, and also, yeah, depending on how the ice will have melted, it's a little bit different, yeah, what it looks like. But all these colors are pretty, and I just love this process, especially the pink and yellow. That's always a favorite. But here I'm just putting them on in a plastic box and just giving them a little bit more dye. So they're already kind of quite wet from the ice melting, and just adding some more color and then just letting them rest again. And then of course they will need to be rinsed in cold water once they're done, and then washed. And yes, as you can see, they didn't turn out quite bold enough, but still very cool. And yeah, I really like them. And yeah, pink and purple, yellow, orange is always a favorite of mine, but I like them all. And luckily some of them have already been snatched up by happy customers, so that's great. And thank you for watching, and see you next time. Bye bye.